So with respect to the issue of race, that's always been an issue in America for all minorities, but in particular the Chinese and Asians, as there's been a number of exclusionary acts, and there's a long history of anti-Asian laws and sentiment in the country. Then in the 60s, being a child of the 60s, that was a huge issue back in the 60s, and so I think what happened after the 60s into the 70s, 80s, 90s, people thought, wow, the race relations are much better, and so I think what's happening is that it's the racism that still exists in this country sort of went underground, wasn't talked about, wasn't as overt. And one thing that's been the result of our most recent administration is that our past president has made it easier for those folks that still harbor those racial antagonisms and racism. He's sort of given them the okay to come out in the open. And so I think nowadays we're seeing it much more openly than we had maybe 10, 15 years ago. And so that's why I think we're seeing all the anti-Asian actions and sentiments and attacks that are happening across the country, is that our past president has made it more fashionable to be a racist and be a white supremacist and so forth. And so I think now we have to resume the efforts to address those issues more openly and more strongly than we have in the past probably decade.
With my retirement as a judge due the end of this month, I can be more reflective, and I can perhaps be a little more honest than I could have been, given the judicial ethics that prevent a sitting judge from commenting about the events of the day. And we recognize that the events of the day right now so crucially involve, among other things, the assaults, the murders in Atlanta, the assaults in Phoenix, Oakland, New York, of our Asian population, members of our Asian community, for no reason perhaps other than the fact that they may be Asian. We don't know that's true in Atlanta at this juncture. But all we know is the suspect went to nothing but Asian massage parlors. And while not all the victims were Asian, 6 were, and he didn't go to a non-Asian massage parlor. Now, race itself is a very difficult topic for all of us. Race is a difficult topic for Americans in general. After all, as a democracy, this is still an experiment where we're blending all people from different ways of life, shapes, and colors. Growing up here in America is just one part of that experiment. But just because it's a difficult discussion doesn't mean that we shouldn't be having it. And in fact, those of us who are of Asian extraction, who are blessed to have become lawyers, professionals like doctors, actors, are stepping forward and need to step forward. And we need to lead, and we need to be able to denounce vigorously, condemn this conduct. Thankfully, the president is in Atlanta today as we speak. My guess is he will forcefully deliver remarks similar to those. As we know, the vice president is also of Asian extraction. As Asian Americans, and I'm not just talking about those of the Asian American Bar Association, but we need to be collaborative with other bar associations and professional organizations to denounce this, because our history, sadly, can be better. And our history is still there, including cases like the U.S. versus Korematsu. We as Asian lawyers need to be able to be there when the time comes to represent those Asian communities, because if we don't, who will? Because as we know, culturally, a lot of Asians prefer to tolerate, to be tolerant, to try to get along. Well, that's okay. I'm not talking about having a protest march. I'm just talking about denouncing and speaking up, because those without a voice, those who are part of marginalized communities, those who came here for that opportunity of the gold mountain, they too are entitled to a voice, even if their voice may not sound like those who speak English here. And in that regard, that's what we need to do. And that's what I hope that we will try to do. I saw today that the Asian Bar Association issued a statement denouncing the assaults, the racial slurs. That's good, but I think that we can do more, and I hope we do more.